about the story is little T's voice, the way he tells everything. And so it was going to either have to be a story about little T and what, the next couple of years of his life, or a story about Brian and Buddy. And the story about Brian and Buddy just wasn't working. But I have written another story that was kind of based off Brian and Buddy. I'll just call it, it was inspired by them. And I'm hoping that maybe someday that story will get published. But I'm still working on that.
Okay, but Mama, this won't.
Oh, Jonathan,
I would
wait. Listen to her.
How about the one thing in the story that you will remember the most? Number 2.
I will remember that Buddy was found in California. I was happy to know that he was fine. I'm happy he stayed in California because Brian needed Buddy and he loved him a lot.
Yeah, you are just so right. Yeah, I think it was exactly the right thing that Brian's that Buddy stayed in California. I'll tell you the truth. A lot of times when I talk to students about Buddy, they argue with me about that decision. They say, no. Brian, Lil T should have brought Buddy home. I'm upset. But you figured it out and you understood that that was actually the exact right thing for Lil T to do. Good job.
You know something, Jonathan? You had a really good question towards the end of your questions. I don't think Mrs. Herlong has addressed yet. And it was about the characters. Do you see your question?
How long did it take you to write the book? How did you come up with the names of the characters?
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, how did I come up with the names of the characters? Well, here's a little secret about writers. Sometimes characters just are born with a name, and so I can't explain it. And that's true of Lil T. Lil T was just born named Tyrone Elijah Roberts. And I don't know why. He just kind of popped into my head, and that was his name. And then off of that, of course, I got the names of Grandpa T and his dad. And then, and similarly, Tanya, she was just kind of born, boom, Tanya. I don't know. I think my brain was thinking of T words. But the way that Buddy was named is exactly the way that Lil T explains it. Because Lil T says, I'm going to name him Buddy because that's what he'll be, my buddy. So that's how that name came up.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. You had some really good questions and comments. Okay, now we're on to Sornaya. Hi, Sornaya.
Where is she? Oh, there she is. Okay.
Sornaya Williams.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. Who would you like to get to know better in the story? Did you want to get to know Buddy better, Sornaya?
Yeah.
Yeah, Buddy is the kind of dog that I think everybody wants to get to know better, because Buddy is the kind of dog that when you're with him, you feel like he knows you. And so naturally, then you want to spend more time with him. Wouldn't it be great to have him kind of be cuddled up next to you, and you could be like patting his head and rubbing that eyebrow that always stands up all the time? That would be fun, wouldn't it? Where did Sunaya go?
Sunaya. Well, she's on mute again.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sunaya.
she muted herself, I think. She
Is she?
muted herself. She's unmuted again.
Is there anything else you would want to share with Mrs. Herlong?
No.
Did you enjoy Buddy?
Yes.
Was this like the biggest book you've ever read in your entire life?
Yeah.
Was it fun?
Was it fun?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, Sunaya, I just have to say that I really feel honored that my book was the biggest one you've ever read in your life. And I hope that there'll be others to come that you'll enjoy.
Okay. And so now we'll hear from John Backer. He'll be our last, well, actually Emmanuel's here also. So John Backer, do you want to share some comments or questions with Mrs. Herlong?
Sure. I wanted to ask you, like, did you have fun writing the book, Buddy?
I had a blast writing the book, Buddy. I want to tell you a little tiny story about how it happened that I wrote the way that I wrote it. So as you know, I have 4 sons, and there came a time, this really miracle time, one summer, where all 4 of them were away at the same time. It was going to be a full 3 weeks. The first week I had one project I had to do. The second week I had another project I had to do. The third week I said, I'm going to get started on that book, Buddy. And so I sat down at my computer and I typed until lunch. And then I had lunch, and then I typed until dinner. And I did that every day for a week, well, for 5 days. And at the end, I had about 80 pages of my story. And that was good because that was sort of the main story in the 80 pages. And then I could go back and start filling it in and making it right. And so I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun writing it. I had a lot of fun with Lil T's voice, because to me, he has such a distinctive way of talking that it made it fun to write down what he would say.
Okay. Thank you.
John, why do you want to get to know Grandpa T better?
I want to know him better because, like, I want to know, like how his life was, like, when he was younger. And, like, I'm pretty sure he went to, like, the army in the book. It said that. And I want to know how his life was during the army.
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. I know that he grew up in that small town in Mississippi, and one of the things he did there was pick cotton. And I got that from my own mother. Grew up in a small town in South Carolina, and she picked a lot of cotton because they had to grow cotton on her farm. And I kind of based Grandpa T, in fact, on my own grandfather, the one who had the farm where they picked cotton. But he was such a storyteller. And every time we'd get together for Sunday dinner, which, by the way, was the middle of the day meal here, he would sit at the head of the table and pretty much just tell stories while all the rest of us sat there and ate. So whenever Granddaddy had the floor, everybody else was just quiet. So I kind of thought of him when I was writing Grandpa T, but Grandpa T was in a different age group than my own grandfather. So my grandfather never had to serve because it was just an odd time in history. But Grandpa T did, and his experiences in the service, if I had to describe them, were mainly that he just worked hard, and it wasn't that exciting, and he was kind of glad to get out. And when he got out, he kind of just went wild. he moved down to New Orleans and he just went wild and spent all the money and had a good old time until he met Alice, his wife to be, who could sing like a bird, and he fell in love with her. And then, as he would say, he picked up his load, and that's when he really became a man.
Okay. John, is there anything else you would like to share with Mrs. Herlong?
No.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us. Hey, Emmanuel, you're up next. Emmanuel Henry.
Good afternoon, Mrs. Herlong.
Hello? Hello?
One question that I have is, does this book change your life? Has this book changed your life?
Has it changed my life? Well, in some ways, yes, because one of the things that's happened as a result of this book is that I've gotten to do stuff exactly like this. I've gotten to go and visit so many schools and talk to so many students. And one of the great things about that is it's a thing that always makes me very happy. It makes me think, boy, the world is in good hands. We're all going to be just fine. So in that sense, yes, it has definitely changed my life. And it was just a pleasure to write it. So I had a lot of fun during the time period that I was working on it.
Emmanuel, is there anything else you wanted to share?
No, that'll be all.
Emmanuel, did you like this book?
Yeah.
Good book, right? Good story, right? Thanks for joining us, Emmanuel. I'd like to open up to Chase. Chase, did you have any questions or comments for Mrs. Herlong about Buddy in New Orleans and the story?
I had a question about what made you want to add a character like J-Boy into the book? What I do?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's a really good question. And it's funny that you would ask me that because one of the criticisms that somebody made, this was very, very long ago, about the story was that they felt like J-Boy was unrealistic. And it was kind of funny because I had feared the reverse, that the opposite thing, that without a character like J-Boy, then the story did not really accurately describe New Orleans. So, and then J-Boy was also, you may recall that one of the things that happened with J-Boy was that he came back to New Orleans before and his family went to Houston, and then he came back by himself. And I'm afraid to say that was very common. That was not unusual in New Orleans at the time, that there were a number of young people who, who just decided that their parents weren't going to tell them what they could do. So they came back to New Orleans. And I thought J-Boy was a good representative of that group of people.
Okay, Chase, that was a great comment, and because we were all surprised about J-Boy, but then we learned a lot about kids who didn't have parents on top of them, and we learned about squatters and the kids who were disadvantaged, right, during Katrina.
Yes, very much so. Very much so.
Yeah. So now I'm just going to open up the floor. And I suppose you can, for the teachers and, my colleagues, the speech pathologists, or any administrators, I'll open up the floor, and I suppose maybe you could just raise your hand, and then Julio could say, it's your turn to speak if you want to say anything to Mrs. Herlong. Raise your hand. Okay. That's Nancy G. You have to unmute her.
Okay, Nancy G. Okay, you're unmuted.
Thank you. Hi, Mrs. Herlong. I just want to say thank you for coming and speaking with our students today. I've worked with many of them that you see here, and I know how much they were looking forward for you to come and to speak to them today, and how much they enjoyed reading Buddy and how they enjoyed each and every character. So thank you for writing such an inspiring and heartwarming book for our children and also for readers across, the world. And I first read Buddy years ago in Mrs. Dalton's class when I was working with her, and I loved it then, and I loved it even more now, and I still cry at the ending. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I still cry at the ending, too.
Yes. Thank you.
Anybody else want to, oh, Mrs. Moody, our media center specialist. Irene Moody. We have to unmute Irene.
I got it. Yeah,
I got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm into books, not media so much.
Okay.
I just want to say, Ms. Herling, the book is so amazing. I read it every other year when Sally does it. And as a librarian, I give it out a lot, as well as your other one, the Great White Sea. And it appeals to so many students. These students did such a great job reading it, and they get so happy about it. And everyone that comes to the library, I give it out a lot, and people just love it. And it's such an inspirational book. And they learn a lot, too. Like we didn't up here really get it, what was going on in New Orleans. And I think it's so great for these students to really learn that. So thank you for writing a book that we learned, cried, and did everything. It's amazing. So,
well, thank you.
Thank you for that.
Thank you for sharing it with your students. And I'm sure as a librarian, when they come to you and they say, what should I read? And if your choice, if you recommend Buddy, then I thank you for that. Thank you very
sure.
much.
Anybody else want to share a comment or question? Well, then, just once again, I want to thank everyone, here, at Manhasset and beyond for supporting.
I'm so sorry, Sally. I'm sorry to interrupt. Jonathan looks like he has a question or something to say.
Okay. Jonathan Diaz.
MH Erlong, are you writing another book now?
Yes. Yeah, that's kind of like you could have asked me, are you breathing right now? And I would have said yes, because there's
called.
because I can't help but be writing a book.
What's
yes.
the book called?
What is it called? Well, it depends on which one you're talking about. I'm working on several right now, but the one that I was talking about that's sort of related to Buddy and Brian, but it's very different, is called Sky Holes. And I'm not going to tell you what a sky hole is because that's part of the mystery of the book.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Why can't you not tell me?
Well, it's not like it's a secret, but it would take me a very long time to explain it. In some ways, it takes a whole book to explain it. So I guess when the time comes, you're just going to have to read the book.
Okay.
Okay, good. It's a deal. It's a deal. All right.
It's a deal, Jonathan, right? Okay. So really, a lot went into this. And once again, we can't let this end without, I just want to thank once again, Allison Rushworth and Dr. Slanger. And we weren't going to do this, and then we decided we would do it, and remote learning just came upon us suddenly. It was like one day we were in school, and then the following week we were not in school, and then we had these different phases of learning, and I was still hoping, we'll be back in school next week. We'll be back the following week. I can still do Buddy. All the hard copies are in the classroom. Or I'll pick up the hard copies and drive to 14 student homes and drop them off. I had all these ideas in my mind. But when the governor mandated, said it's mandatory,
yes,
that the schools stay closed, I emailed Dr. Slanger, and Dr. Ackroft, and I said, how can we make this happen? And, immediately we just went on to Kindle and got everyone a version. And, I did the screencastify and narrated the chapters, and then the speech, teachers, Mrs. Slovan and Mrs. Gasparlias, they just really helped the kids remotely understand and comprehend the book. And it really took a village, and all my TAs, like I mentioned before, Mr. Hoppy and Miss Diana and Mrs. Barbara, Miss Sullivan, we all came together and were able to make Buddy our buddy during distance learning.
Well, that's very inspiring to hear you say that, Sally, Mrs. Dalton. I'm sorry, and I want to say my thank yous to everyone too, because why would a person write a book if other people weren't going to read it? And when you've written a book, you kind of fall in love with it, and letting it go is kind of like sending your kids out into the world, and you know that you don't have any control over what happens once they go out there. But when your book finds friends, it's just the most wonderful experience in the world. And I feel like we're all now kind of a little group of friends because we all have the same buddy. Thank you very much. It's been a wonderful experience for me.
Well, we thank you. Round of applause for Mrs. Herlong.
Woo! Thank you for you.
Okay. So thank you everyone for joining us, and I'm going to officially end this meeting.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.